Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're here, you're looking for that shortcut to being truly well-informed. And today, we are diving deep into the messy, really high-stakes reality of cyber frontline during the first half of 2025.
That's right. Our mission today is pretty surgical. We're going to be analyzing the latest threat intelligence, pulling mostly from the 2025 Mid-Year Cyber Risk Report and some other recent breach data.
And the goal here is to really understand this critical shift in the attack landscape. Because the headline looks good, right? Fewer incidents overall.
Right, but the underlying truth is, while it's disturbing, the attacks that do succeed are far, far more devastating, especially financially speaking.
So we're going to ignore the background noise and just focus squarely on severity and impact. This deep dive is going to unpack stats that show a massive drop in insurance claims, but at the same time, this exponential spike in the cost of certain attack types.
And we're going to get into something really interesting. We'll reveal exactly how sophisticated cyber criminals are succeeding, including this wild tactic of finding and using your own corporate secrets, specifically your cyber insurance policy against you.
That part is just unbelievable.
It really is. You know, the first half of 2025, it presented a very deceptive picture of stabilization. The sheer frequency of reported incidents is down, but that stability is, it's deeply misleading.
So the modern attacker is more focused.
Highly focused and intentional. They're trading those high-volume, low-yield attacks for targeted, maximum impact assaults. We absolutely have to look beyond just the incident count to assess the true financial risk here.
Okay, so let's unpack that contradiction right away. The initial news, especially for the cyber insurance industry, sounds like a huge win. A dramatic 53% reduction in cyber insurance claims in the first half of 2025 compared to the same time last year.
A huge number.
A huge decrease. It suggests, that organizations are better protected or that preventative controls are finally working. But the economic impact tells a completely different story.
It does. And what's so fascinating here is how that stabilization, that drop in frequency, it just masks the soaring cost of the attacks that actually break through.
Right.
So while the average loss per incurred claim decreased slightly by about 11%, the concentration of financial damage has never been higher. And this jump in destructive potential, it's driven almost entirely by one thing.
Ransomware.
One force and one force only. Ransomware.
It feels like ransomware has just completely cornered the market on financial ruin in the cyber world. Can you break down just how much financial risk is tied up in this one threat?
It's absolute market dominance. The data shows ransomware attacks grew in severity by a reported 17% in just the first half of 2025.
17%.
And some reports I've seen push that number closer to 20%. And this incredible growth in destructive capability, it means ransomware now accounts for a staggering 76% of all incurred losses. 76%. From one specific type of cyber incident. That's a stunning concentration of risk. It says so much about the ROI that attackers are getting from this.
And that's just the direct attack. That figure, the concentration, it jumps even higher when you factor in the ripple effect from third-party risk.
So when a vendor gets hit.
Exactly. When we factor in losses that happen because a client's vendor or Mapausica gets hit with ransomware, which by the way, accounts for a huge chunk, roughly 15% of total losses. The damage linked back to ransomware jumps to an astonishing 91% of all documented incurred losses for the period.
Wow, 91%.
Yeah.
This just highlights how deeply intertwined third-party risk is with ransomware. If your critical SaaS provider gets hit, the cost of their failure is just passed right on to you.
Precisely. And as Jeremy Gettler, who's the global head of claims at Resilience, noted, that 53% drop in frequency is just noise. The real story is the 17% increase in ransomware losses.
It tells us that the criminals are becoming more selective, far more targeted, and just exponentially more devastating in their approach. They're targeting the high-value systems, the big organizations, where the potential payday justifies the massive effort required for a modern ransomware attack.
So given that, we did see an interesting counter trend.
Yeah.
Payment rates for ransoms are actually going down. If companies are paying less often, why is the severity still spiking so much?
That's a critical question, and we are seeing some real success in recovery strategies. The rate of known extortion payments dropped from 22% in 2024 to only 14% of claims in the first half of 2025.
Companies are getting better at just saying no.
They're getting better at response, at recovery, and at resisting that initial demand,
Yeah.
especially the one to unlock their systems. But the severity still rises because of this tactic twist,
Yeah.
double extortion.
Ah, right. The system unlock is only half the battle now, isn't it?
Exactly. Attackers now, they routinely steal huge amounts of sensitive data before they encrypt anything. Then they demand two payments.
And for the key.
One for the system key, which, as we said, many companies now resist, and a second, often much larger fee, the data suppression payment, to supposedly delete the stolen information.
And paying that suppression fee is notoriously useless, right? I mean, you have zero guarantee they'll actually destroy the data.
It's highly detrimental. Paying it offers absolutely no guarantee, and maybe more importantly, it does not mitigate your regulatory or notification requirements. The liability from the breach is still there, and you've just paid a criminal for a promise they have no incentive to keep.
The focus shifts from operational disruption to, what, reputational and regulatory risk.
Exactly. And that is where this conversation turns from a tactical threat into a high-level corporate nightmare, this clandestine policy access.
This is the part that I just find incredible. The idea that threat actors are actively hunting for, locating, and then using a company's own cyber insurance policy.
This is one of the most stunning insights into the, let's call it the sophisticated financial mechanics of modern ransomware. Attackers aren't just looking for customer data or source code anymore.
They're looking for the financial limits of their target.
That's it. In documented cases, threat actors found the client's cyber insurance policy. They analyzed its limits, and then they used that specific information to structure their ransom demand. They are leveraging the company's financial defense mechanism as a price list.
So they set the demand specifically below the policy limit.
Precisely. That minimizes the chance the client will fight or negotiate too hard, and it maximizes the chance the claim will just get paid out quickly by the insurer. The policy suddenly goes from being a layer of protection to being an exposed crown jewel asset.
But how are they finding these documents? I mean, these are highly sensitive internal contracts.
It's often through the same initial access they use for everything else. But now they specifically search for keywords like insurance policy, declaration page, or coverage limits.
And it's just sitting on a shared drive somewhere.
Often, yes. Shared network drives, misconfigured cloud storage, or inside emails that were exposed in a phishing campaign. All places employees think are secure, but, they lack the specialized protection needed for these kinds of documents.
So treating your policy like any other HR document is the core mistake. What does a real mitigation strategy look like for something this crucial?
Well, the policy document requires a specialized fortified defense. It starts with identity first, security so, mandatory multi-factor authentication, strict role-based access. That's non-negotiable.
But it's got to be more than just access control.
Oh, yeah. You have to treat the file itself as toxic. We recommend encrypted cloud storage that uses a zero-knowledge architecture and strong crypto, like AES 256.
Do you walk us through that? Why zero-knowledge architecture specifically?
Sure. With a standard cloud provider, they hold the encryption keys. So if the provider gets compromised, your data is potentially exposed. Zero-knowledge architecture means the service provider has no knowledge of the decryption keys. Only the client holds them. This makes the storage vault itself kind of irrelevant to the attacker. They might steal the encrypted file, but without the key, it's just useless noise.
So using a specialized digital vault, not just, say, Dropbox.
Exactly. It's becoming a necessity for these critical risk documents. The need for robust risk management, especially with vendors and these crown jewel assets, really speaks to the challenges CISOs are facing.
They need visibility that goes way beyond their own firewalls.
Absolutely. The modern CISO needs resources to manage not just their internal tech, but the sprawling, complex, third-party vendor ecosystem that's now causing, 15% of all incurred losses?
That's a perfect transition to our sponsor. We want to take a moment to thank CISO Marketplace. If you are a CISO navigating this complex landscape, you need robust vetting and risk management solutions. They help security leaders cut through the noise and find the right controls for assets that have suddenly become attack targets. Check them out at www.cisomarketplace.com. So, ransomware is hitting harder, smarter, and leveraging our own financial strategies against us. Let's pivot now to the technical tools criminals are using to get that initial access. We're seeing this surprising mix of updated legacy code and really targeted cutting-edge exploits.
The sheer volume of exploitable flaws just keeps climbing. Total disclosed CVEs increased by 16% in the first half of 2025. But, the tactical shifts in which vulnerabilities they're targeting are far more telling.
Where are they focusing their firepower? Is it still the usual giants?
It is, but the target profile is diversifying strategically. Microsoft is still the single most targeted vendor. That's about 17% of exploitations. But attackers are putting equal effort into high-value infrastructure.
You mean edge devices?
Exactly. Edge security and gateway appliances, so think SSL VPNs, next-gen firewalls. They also account for 17% of observed exploitations.
And why the focus on those?
Because they're the ultimate perimeter choke point. You compromise an edge appliance, you often get privileged network access, potentially bypassing every single internal defense. It's the perfect pivot point.
Plus, the stats show a clear preference for efficiency, right?
Right. 69% of the exploited vulnerabilities didn't require any form of authentication, and nearly a third enabled remote code execution, or RCE.
Meaning the attacker gets instant, total control over the system.
Instant arbitrary control, often without even needing to load malware. Now let's talk about that surprising blast from the past,
Okay.
the return of legacy malware families.
I saw this in the notes. We're talking about families like Celity and Tofsy, which are names I feel like I haven't heard in a decade. Why are they suddenly back?
It's a classic example of cybercrime economics meeting technical evolution. These legacy families reemerged as top threats in command and control detections because their core code bases are just incredibly stable and reliable.
So they take the reliable skeleton of the old malware, wrap it in new camouflage, and just deploy it.
That's the perfect analogy. This method lets them easily defeat older signature-based defenses. The code is stable, it's proven, and it offers attackers a low-cost, high-return asset. It's much cheaper than developing something brand new.
And at the same time, we're seeing a tactical pivot away from those older info stealers toward more versatile tools like remote access Trojans or RATs.
That's right. Tools like Asyncrat, XWorm, Remcos, they're gaining prominence because they combine rapid data theft with the ability to maintain persistent, hands-on access. This versatility makes them ideal for all sorts of campaigns.
Moving beyond the network, we have to talk about e-commerce skimming, the Magcart threat, which just seems to constantly evolve.
Magcart remains an elevated, highly effective threat because it attacks the client side, what the customer sees. This often bypasses a lot of traditional server-side defenses, and the actors are becoming incredibly covert.
How covert are we talking? What are the new TTPs?
They are operating in some really obscure ways. Latest TTPs include abusing legitimate services like Google Tag Manager to load malicious scripts, hiding code in obscure HTML tags, and even exploiting specific CSS directives.
Wait, exploiting cascading style sheets. How does injecting code via CSS work to steal credit cards?
It's actually ingenious. CSS has this before pseudo element that lets developers inject content before the content of a specified element.
Okay.
Well, Magcart actors are using this mechanism to deploy their e-skimmers. By hiding the malicious script inside the CSS files, they can sometimes evade content security policies that are configured to check the HTML and JavaScript, but might overlook content injected via the styling layer.
It's security by obscurity, but it works.
It works surprisingly well, and the Avery Products Corporation breach confirms just how effective this can be over a long period. That malware was embedded in their cart, scraping payment info from July 2024 all the way to January 2025. It just shows that third-party vendor management and client-side security are no longer optional.
So systems are being compromised by targeted malware and now obscure CSS hacks. But fundamentally, the fastest route to high-value data is still the human element. The data confirms that human error, often amplified by incredibly sophisticated social engineering, is the biggest attack vector.
Absolutely. And the data on lateral movement speed is, frankly, terrifying. Once an attacker gets initial access, the average time until breakout, that is, moving from that first machine to another, can be less than 50 minutes.
That window is just tiny. And that initial access almost always relies on some form of deception.
Almost always. And we have to focus on the massive, persistent financial drain that is business email compromise, or BEC. The FBI's 2024 report confirmed over 21,000 complaints, resulting in losses over $2.7 billion.
It's the second most financially damaging category of cybercrime in the U.S., right? Just behind investment fraud.
That's right. And these attacks are so high leverage, they target specific functions, usually finance or HR, and they use urgency, perfect impersonation, and pressure to get what they want.
And this is where AI moves from being a theoretical risk to an immediate multi-million-dollar reality. Here's where it gets really interesting. The AI deepfake nightmare.
The ability of AI to generate utterly convincing deepfakes has fundamentally changed the social engineering game. It makes it nearly impossible for humans to rely on their own senses alone. We have that stunning case study from Hong Kong involving the $25.6 million wire transfer.
The dollar amount alone is shocking. A finance employee at a multinational transfers over $25 million after a video call. But the most alarming part was the detail of the deception.
Exactly. The employee was already skeptical. They got an initial message, supposedly from the UK-based CFO, asking for a confidential transaction. The employee knew the risks of text-based phishing.
Right, they were trained.
They were. But they were ultimately convinced to proceed only after joining a video meeting that featured realistic, live recreations of multiple colleagues, including the supposed CFO. These were high-quality deepfakes generated from publicly available footage and voice recordings.
So it wasn't just the CFO. It was the entire meeting. All deep fake.
The entire meeting, the psychological impact of seeing not just your boss, but a whole conference room of recognizable, seemingly real colleagues, all confirming this urgent transaction. It's overwhelming. It breaks down that last line of defense, that innate human skepticism.
It creates this impenetrable bubble of apparent authenticity.
It does. And speaking of groups that excel at blending technical knowledge with extreme human deception, we have to talk about the group that has dominated headlines this year. Scattered Spider.
Who are these guys?
Yeah.
They don't sound like a typical state-sponsored group.
They're not. Scattered Spider is a highly sophisticated, English-speaking cybercriminal group. They're unique because they're believed to be primarily young operatives based in the US and UK, and their origins trace back not to state activity, but to a dark corner of online gaming, where harassment evolved into SIM swapping and eventually devastating ransomware.
What makes them so formidable in the current environment?
It's their blend of skills. They combine a deep, granular understanding of enterprise cloud platforms, expertly leveraging misconfigurations in Azure, AWS, and Microsoft 365 with truly adept social engineering.
And they employ a focused vertical strategy, right? Hitting one industry hard before moving to the next.
Precisely. They create significant impact by focusing their efforts. In the first half of 2025, they were linked to high-visibility attacks on major UK retailers, like Marks & Spencer and Harrods, before pivoting to major US retailers like Victoria's Secret and Adidas. Then they shifted to targeting the US insurance industry.
But unlike a lot of the big ransomware groups operating from safe havens, Scattered Spider seems more vulnerable to law enforcement.
That's a crucial distinction. Because their operatives are largely based in the US and UK, recent arrests by the UK's National Crime Agency show they are more within reach of law enforcement than groups operating out of Russia or Iran.
The prevalence of BEC, deepfakes, and these urgent phishing attempts, including those bizarre FBI warnings about fictitious taxes owed, it just means we all need to be so vigilant.
It demands constant skepticism and a willingness to verify, especially with urgent requests involving money. The pressure is designed to bypass logic, which is why having external verified resources is just non-negotiable.
And we know our listeners prioritize awareness and prevention. That's why we want to thank our second sponsor, ScamWatch HQ. When we're discussing the acceleration of these human-centric scams, you need to know where to find verified, up-to-date resources. If you're questioning an email or a phone call, check them out. They provide essential alerts and guidance on avoiding the latest deception tactics. You can find them at www.scamwatchhq.com. Shifting our focus, if the bad guys can't trick employees directly, they are ruthlessly exploiting dependencies. Supply chain and third-party attacks have dominated 2025 headlines, often leading to mass credential and account exposure.
And the attacker only needs to find one weak link. A supply chain attack is simple. It targets a third-party tool or service to infiltrate the ultimate target. It's incredibly efficient because large companies rely on thousands of outside vendors. Compromise one, and you get access to potentially hundreds of victims.
And the sources revealed a particularly intense wave of attacks focused on the Salesforce ecosystem this year.
This was a major event. A wave of attacks hit multiple major companies by exploiting vulnerabilities within third-party apps connected to their core Salesforce environments. We saw confirmed incidents at Workday, Elastic, Stellantis, all linked back to a breach of the SalesLoft Drift application.
And they were exploiting stolen OAuth tokens, right?
Yeah.
Which are essentially digital keys.
Precisely. Once they're stolen, the attacker can just impersonate the legitimate application. They have a pre-authorized key to walk right into the system. The Qantas data leak of 5.7 million records also fits this profile, a breach of a customer service platform hosted in the Salesforce environment.
So even if Salesforce itself is secure, You have to audit every single third-party script and app running in your environment.
You have to. And this reliance on external systems inevitably funnels back into the crisis of stolen credentials, which is the literal currency fueling this underground economy.
It's the bedrock of account takeover fraud.
Absolutely. The scale of harvested credentials is just overwhelming. We saw the disclosure of the Cynthian Stealer Log threat dataset, which exposed an estimated 183 million unique email accounts with passwords. And crucially, this data didn't come from a big corporate breach, but from info-stealer malware on millions of individual user devices.
And that data directly fuels the massive problem of account takeover, or ATO fraud.
It does. Credential stuffing is highly automated. Attackers use these huge lists and test them across hundreds of different platforms. ATO fraud losses are projected to climb to $17 billion in 2025, up from $13 billion the year before.
Where are they concentrating these ATO efforts?
They go where the stored value is highest. Fintech and finance saw a staggering 122% increase in ATO attacks. And travel and ticketing saw a huge spike, too, up 56%, because loyalty points are high-value assets that can be quickly monetized.
It seems like companies are being hit by their vendors and users are being victimized by their own poor password hygiene. How does the consumer view all this?
The shift in who they think is responsible is undeniable. A recent study found that 73% of users believe the brand, not the user, is ultimately responsible for preventing these ATOs.
That's a huge risk
It's
transfer.
a significant risk transfer. If the brand's protection fails, they absorb the damage, regardless of how the user exposed the credential.
Before we move to personal security, let's briefly touch on two other high-impact trends: friendly fraud and developer mistakes.
Right. Friendly fraud, the intentional misuse of the chargeback system, is expected to cost merchants over $100 billion this year. It's an economic black hole. We also saw major crypto theft, like CoinSpade losing over $37 million via a key compromise.
And that baffling, consistent mistake we see from developers, carelessly publishing corporate secrets. How does this keep happening?
It's a chronic failure in operational security and training. Developers use public online code formatting tools like JSON Formatter to quickly clean up code snippets. In their rush, they often paste high-value corporate secrets, GitHub tokens, database credentials, Active Directory credentials right into these public tools.
And attackers are just scraping these sites.
Actively scraping them. The secrets get exposed not through some zero-day exploit, but because an employee used an insecure public utility.
We've established that the enterprise risk is high, but the attack surface has fundamentally expanded beyond the corporate perimeter and into the personal digital lives of everyone, especially executives.
Protecting the personal side, the human firewall, is now absolutely critical for corporate security. The moment an executive uses a personal device or home network for work, the security team loses visibility and control.
And the vulnerability stats are terrifying.
They are. 27% of executives' personal devices contain malware, 76% are actively leaking data, and a shocking 87% have no security software installed at all.
And the home network itself is a soft target.
Indeed. We found that 23% of executives have open ports on their home network, often from poorly configured home security cameras or smart devices. The security of the home network is now a direct corporate risk concern.
This just necessitates a really disciplined, proactive approach to privacy, what's known as operations security, or OPSEC.
OPSEC is the process of controlling your data output to prevent misuse. The core principle is security through privacy. The idea that you can't have real security if your personal data, your habits, your preferences are constantly leaking out.
So how does a busy person, like an executive, move past just changing passwords and implement a real OPSEC strategy? The sources suggest a structured 5-step process.
Yes. It starts with discipline. Step 1, identify your critical information. Step 2, analyze the threats. Step 3, analyze your vulnerabilities. Where is this info likely to leak? 4 is risk assessment. And finally, step 5 is applying countermeasures. It moves security from being reactive to being foundational.
That structure is vital, but the concept that makes it practical is the personal persona strategy. How do you implement these federated identities to contain damage?
This is the practical core of modern OPSEC. You define and strictly separate 4 personas. The personal persona is your true self, used only for critical legal and financial things like banking and taxes. The professional persona handles work, medical professional licensing. The social persona is for friends and general online communities.
And the fourth, the alias persona, the digital disguise. What's its purpose?
The alias persona is designed to be the sacrificial lamb. It is entirely separated, quarantined from your other identities. It absorbs all the risk from untrusted sources, signing up for new services, clicking on ads, interacting with unfamiliar vendors.
And you set it up with a unique email and phone number.
Exactly. A unique email, a VoIP number. If that alias gets breached, the attacker gains zero useful information about your real life. It's a digital decoy that contains the damage.
That's a massive shift in mindset. It even extends to high-level physical OPSEC, like the example of anonymously purchasing a car.
It's the extreme end, but it illustrates the principle. The goal is to make sure running the license plate only reveals a generic holding company, not your home address, to the dealer or any third parties. It increases the effort required for an attacker to correlate your physical and digital presence.
On a more accessible level, let's talk about the simple, powerful tool of email aliases.
Using a unique email alias for every single signup is a powerful way to detect breaches. You use the plus sign trick, mymail plus Amazon at domain.com. If you later get spammed to that address, you know instantly and precisely which company leaked or sold your address.
And there's a deterrent effect for attackers too, right?
Absolutely. Security researchers have noted that many threat actors actively scrub their lists of emails using these aliases because those users are seen as more security-focused and more likely to report spam.
Finally, let's connect this OPSEC mindset to the financial world, focusing on the critical tool for combating surveillance capitalism, the burner credit card.
This is a tool to minimize your exposure to, well, surveillance capitalism, the collection and commodification of personal data not just by retailers, but by banks and credit card companies who actively sell your detailed purchase history to data brokers.
That's a tough concept because most of us trust our bank more than any online retailer.
And yet, they are major players in the data brokerage world. This is why services like privacy.com exist. These burner card apps let you generate a unique one-time use card number for every vendor. The mechanism is simple but powerful. Your actual bank sees a charge from the burner card service, not the merchant's name.
So the bank can't sell my history of buying specific products because they only see a charge from privacy.com.
Exactly. It blinds the surveillance model. And this level of masking is essential because data brokers are aggressively collecting executive personal information. 99% of executives have profiles on these sites, and 40% of those profiles contain high-value data like their home IP address.
This all comes down to building a security strategy by design, not by reaction. And speaking of security by design, we're excited to thank our merch sponsor for this Black Friday sponsorship. For those who believe in building security and privacy into their physical and digital lives, check out the gear at securitybydesign.store. They're running a special promotion, offering 25% off throughout this Cyber Monday bonanza. We covered a tremendous amount today, from the macro shift in cyber economics to the necessity of building digital fortresses around our personal lives. The central chilling takeaway is that the threat environment is defined by severe, targeted, and financially focused intent.
Sophistication is stunning. We saw evidence of ransomware gangs using cyber insurance policies to set their ransom demands, and the immediate multi-million-dollar damage caused by AI-driven deepfakes, which weaponize trust.
And we highlighted the persistent human element, from the advanced social engineering of scattered spider to the baffling developer mistakes leaking high-value credentials online.
It all connects.
It does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means the biggest financial risks are no longer volume-based. They're strictly severity-based. The mandate for security leaders is clear. Meticulously vet your vendors and secure your edge devices. And for individuals, it's even clearer. You have to adopt a security through privacy mindset to quarantine your digital lives.
Defense in depth is the starting line. Privacy in depth is the finish line.
Considering that account takeover fraud losses are projected to climb to $17 billion in 2025, and 73% of users blame the brand, here is our final provocative thought for you to chew on. What happens when AI-driven fraud-as-a-service kits become so effective that nearly all consumers start habitually using privacy tools like unique email aliases and burner credit cards? If consumer-driven OPSEC becomes the norm, what will be the ultimate financial and systemic consequence of effectively blinding the surveillance capitalism business model that currently underpins so much of the digital economy?